Today we are talking about a topic that is so hot right now, inflation. What is it? What is it doing? And how can you protect yourself and your finances? Vince Gaetano, a veteran mortgage broker from Ontario, joins us to discuss this topic. Before we go any further, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button to show your support for the show. Thanks so much.
You're listening to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, where we chat with real estate experts from across the province to learn what's happening in the real estate market. Here's your host, Ron Quaroni.
Hello and welcome to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. My name is Ron Quaroni, and today we're joined by the wise old owl himself, Vince Gaetano, it's Toronto, right, Vince? Out of Ontario?
Right in the heart of Toronto.
How do we find you today?
Things are great. It's been a busy start to the month, as always, and I'm really excited to be on the show. Thanks for the invite, Ron.
You're more than welcome, and I'm really excited to have you on. We were chatting a little bit yesterday, and we found out that you've been in the loan business about as long as I've been alive, so you're the perfect person to come and chat with us about today's topic, and I hope we can kind of relate it back to mortgages, but I'd really like to get into inflation, and it's a big topic right now. A lot of people, I guess, kind of have a little fear of what is inflation and what does that mean and how is it going to affect my life. So I really wanted to get you on today, Vince, to kind of share your knowledge on what it means. What is inflation?
Well, when prices rise on average in an economy, it's called inflation. You know, inflation occurs when it occurs, the domestic currency loses value. The fact that a candy bar cost 10 cents in the 70s and now costs $1 is a way of saying that $1 used to buy 10 bars, but now only buys one. The dollar's lost value and the domestic currency is becoming less valuable. That's the easiest way to describe inflation.
People are really feeling this right now, I think, mostly for the things they have to buy. Your gas, your groceries. I think everyone kind of sees that this is happening. Is there any idea what causes inflation?
Well, it's a complex question. There has been a lot of money printed by the government during the pandemic, and a lot of people have saved a lot of money and now have a lot to consume. So they're driving prices up. The supply chain has been disrupted. It's bottlenecked. So there's not as many products out there for people to buy. So they're fighting for it and prices are going up. Let's look at the PPEs. When the pandemic just started, there weren't enough of them. And some businesses were charged or were claimed to be charging exorbitant amounts to the point where the media considered them being price gougers. I remember toilet paper and, just different PPEs were being sold for, $40, $50 for a roll. Like it was just a crazy thing. So that creates inflation. When there's an imbalance of demand and supply, you're going to get it. But I do believe that this could be temporary. I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of people holding on to cash. There's estimates of $200 billion sitting in bank accounts ready to be spent. But what I do believe has happened during the pandemic is people become more prudent. People have determined what is a need and what is a want, and they've lived without certain things. So I believe that, inflation is going to be impacted in the staples, groceries, fuel. We're seeing interest rates go up a little bit. So the cost for shelter is going to be going up. So what everybody needs to do is really determine what is their household inflation rate and not really listen to the noise that's out in the marketplace. Everybody's basket of goods that they purchase for their household is different. And you really need to drill down, start budgeting. It's Financial Literacy Month in November. People have to start understanding what they're spending money on, where they could curb spending and save a few dollars and understand exactly how inflation is impacting their household and them individually.
You touched on a few things there. Let's switch it to real estate, Vince, how is inflation potentially going to hit the Canadian market? And I know we have a very diverse real estate market, so it might be hard to nationally paint a brush with that. But do you have a few thoughts on that, Vince?
Yeah, inflation is going to impact people differently. If you're a homeowner, it's going to have a positive outlook. If you're trying to get in the market, it's going to be painful. So the reality is inflation is going to impact interest rates. We're going to see rates probably moving upwards. Immigration is going to have a toll on the valuation of homes, demographics, and the availability of homes. Let's leave out the speculative demand of people looking to buy rental properties in that, because that's another issue that's thrown into the mix. But the reality is there's not enough available homes. We have immigration coming in to Canada of about 400,000 every year for the next few years. That plus the group of people that didn't show up in 2020, that still has to be filled. That quota that wasn't filled during the pandemic is still going to be coming in. So these permanent residents need places to live. We're seeing elderly people not downsizing. The impact of COVID has created a fear of going into retirement residences, long-term care facilities, and retirement homes. So they're hanging on to their homes longer. That group of people are not turning over those properties to create supply, and we're seeing a real low level of supply in the marketplace. The listings are at an all-time low. There's not enough properties for sale. And I joke about it, but if you have an empty basement and you could convert it to a basement suite, this is the opportunity to do so, because the reality is it could technically supplement any interest rate hikes by renting out your basement to an immigration population that's coming in and needs to live somewhere. So there's a lot of factors coming into play. I feel bad for the new entrant who wants to buy a home, because it's starting to feel like it's out of range. Prices are going up and they're not making enough money fast enough to make up for the gains on the real estate side.
Right. And even if those people aren't necessarily buying homes, they still need a place to live. So that's going to drive rental property demand. So even if you have all these people, you're still chasing kind of the end supply.
You're absolutely right, Ron. And one thing people forget about is foreign students. Canada has upwards of 600,000 foreign students that come to Canada to learn, and they end up staying. And that's in addition to the immigration numbers that come in. So we have a real supply problem, and we're not building homes fast enough. There's 3 levels of government that are involved in the whole home building process. There's the federal government that controls manpower, that's immigration. So they control the influx of people coming in. And at 400,000, we are at about just over 1% of our population coming in every year. You have the province that controls the land supply and the designation of zoning for high density, low density, whatever the case is. And then you have the municipal government that controls the permits. The reality is in Canada, these 3 levels are never aligned. So that means delay upon delay. The joke in GTA, the Toronto area, is that a condo takes 10 years from the time of land acquisition to occupancy.
So I would guess that kind of where you sit on this, Vince, is that your answer to this is find a way to get those 3 levels of government working together and creating more supply that matches this influx of people.
Well, that would be the utopian solution.
If you were the president, yeah. Yeah.
The reality is these governments just point the finger and blame each other. There's a NIMBY philosophy at City Hall and GTA of not in my backyard, and we need higher density. They're not making any more land, so you're going to have to tick off a few people by building high density in neighborhoods that are trying to protect that from happening. And it's a struggle. And if people think that these, all the parties promised significant increases in affordable housing, well, good luck. It's not happening. Those are just to get votes, to get in. Nothing really happens. And I'm just not optimistic that we're going to be seeing hundreds of thousands of new units put on the market to help appease the immigration flood.
So when you kind of look in your crystal ball, you see a continued lack of supply, which then drives the price of homes up.
Absolutely. I think what we're going to have to see is rezoning laws take shape. I think you're going to have to upset a few people. And the reality is if you really want to tackle this problem, you got to be serious about it. And you're going to upset those that are just trying to fight this whole high density issue. And people want to be in big cities. Fuel prices are going through the roof. And if you are driving until you qualify, as the saying in GTA, you're going to have to commute an hour and a half each way to get to work. And that's just not feasible. It doesn't have a long-term positive outlook in my eyes.
Definitely. Vince, I want to go back to something that you said earlier about inflation and interest rates. And I just want you to quickly dumb it down for us. Why will interest rates rise with inflation?
Well, I did a post today about, how banks are doing a terrible job helping people save money because they're paying nothing on bank accounts. It's just terrible products. And, if inflation is sitting at 4% as it was in September, I think it was 4.4, and you're making zero in your bank account, the value of your money is decreasing while it's sitting there. So they have to increase interest rates to keep people engaged and understand that they got to give them confidence. So rates will have to go up. The reality is, will it be temporary or will it be long-term? We do have a supply chain issue. There's a lot of products that are missing on the shelves as people go into hardware stores and whatnot. And we're going to have to start seeing that inflation rate push interest rates to a level that's more appealing for people to keep their money in the bank. I think fixed rates will be moving up. They've already started moving up. The variable rate's a different story. I think the variable rate, they have to be cautious with it because the variable rates do impact manufacturing. A lot of Canada's manufacturing use variable products to fund inventory, payroll, their businesses with their lines of credits. So they got to be a little bit more cautious. The variable product in general on the mortgage side only represents a small portion of the total mortgage portfolio. So it's not as impactful, although we're seeing a shift through education where people are taking more advantage of the variable rate product more so now than ever. So, but keep in mind, I think people shouldn't panic because as mortgage professionals across the country have vilified the stress test, that could be the saving grace for homeowners that were involved with the stress test to help them, protect themselves from rising interest rates. So I still think we're not going to see rates in and around the 4.79, 5.25 stress test rates that have been applied on people that have been in homes the last few years. So I think we're in good territory. I think we're in a safe environment if people are prudent with their money and are budgeting properly.
So one of the most common questions that I've been getting over the last couple of days, because I think it's starting to become a little more mainstream, that this is starting to enter the public consciousness of how do they prepare their mortgage in this environment. Now, from my standpoint, there's the two schools of thought of fixed or variable. Now, the people who are very afraid of rising rates want to lock in a fixed rate product, and the variable right now is quite low, but there's the chance that quarter or whenever the Bank of Canada meets that might slowly increase. What are you telling folks, Vince? What's your advice to the customer that comes and says, should I go fixed or variable right now?
Well, I've been doing TV for 19 years, so I'm on record of being a variable rate advocate. I do not like the fixed rate mortgage. I think the penalties associated with fixed rate mortgages are quite punitive. And I think people need to be aware of that. The variable rate has always proven to be a saver for people, like an interest, like a cost savings for people. I'm an advocate of Moish Milevsky, a professor at Schulich Business School. He's written many papers on this topic, and 91 or 92% of the cases show that the variable rate is more favorable to a homeowner than a fixed rate. And I use that evidence to help my clients understand how more beneficial you are in a variable. But having said that, you should have a plan. You should have a strategy that allows you to protect yourself. We talked about the stress test earlier. The stress test has created a buffer for people to withstand rate increases. So, if you're being qualified at 5.25% and you're only paying 1.5%, why would you want to lock in at 2.5 to 65 right now? Makes no sense. You could withstand 4 interest rate bumps. So we are really keen on making sure that our clients understand the risk, understand that they've been qualified under a stress test, and I don't see the variable rate going up 16 times by 1/4 point each time over the next few years. It's just not going to happen. So we also need to be realists. We have to understand that as rates go up, the cost to service the federal debt goes up, which means these political parties are going to need to increase taxes to afford paying more on the debt, because we now have $1 trillion of it.
Wonderful. Anything else to add on inflation, mortgages, how this relates to the real estate market as a whole, Vince?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's everybody's got to understand what their inflation rate is in their household. And I really talk about that a lot, because a lot of people just assume everything said in the media is correct. Okay. The government's done a really good job manipulating the inflation rate to appease their numbers. The basket of goods and the weighting of each product within it changes from month to month, quarter to quarter, and you have to be aware of that. Your inflation rate is different than your neighbors. It's different than your siblings, different from your parents. Everybody needs to understand what they're spending money on, and Financial Literacy Month should help people understand that budgeting is a key component of making sure you're financially sound. So understand what you're spending money on, look at your bank accounts, look at your credit card statements, and look at what those subscriptions, what those monthly costs are, and see if you're really using them. Cancel them, start saving money. And that's what we try to do with all our clients. We try to educate them and push financial literacy, not on a month, not 1 month a year, but throughout the year.
That's so good. I just want to quickly dive into something you just said there, Vince, that everyone's inflation rate will be different. Can you quickly explain that? Does that tie in that my fuel bill will be different than someone else's, or what would make my inflation rate different from someone else's?
Okay, so let's use someone in the city and someone in the rural area, right? Someone in the city may not have a car, so they don't have insurance costs, gas to purchase, and car maintenance. If you're in rural Canada, you might have those costs, whereas you may just have a transportation pass, like a bus pass or a subway pass. If you're a vegetarian, you're not buying meat, so you're not going to be paying the high costs of meat, which are projected to go up 8 to 10% year over year. So if you're buying fast food, you're going to be charged more because of delivery fees and whatnot. If you're cooking at home, you're going to have less of an inflation rate because you're cooking your meals. Everyone has a different buying habit. Some people smoke, some people drink, some others don't, right? So the cost of the sin taxes that are usually applied to, the sin products don't apply to you. So everybody's basket of goods is different, and you should really hone in on what the cost of your goods are over someone else's.
That's wonderful stuff. Yeah, having a different idea of what you're consuming and what increases might do to you, I think is a really, really good idea. Vince, you've been a wealth of knowledge. How can people stay up to date with you on social media? I know I found you on Instagram. Can you tell us about your Instagram channel?
Yeah, I've pivoted from TV to social media over the last year. This Thursday, I'll be doing my 50th episode. I do a weekly Instagram show on my IG account. It's Vince G Mortgage. We also have an Owl Mortgage account, and we're basically talking about everything associated with the home, everything associated with budgeting, helping people save money. And the idea is to educate as much as we can. That's our foundation of the brokerage, is to help people understand that you could save money and you could start looking at buying a house by setting a plan on the investment side. And that could carry you through the whole ownership process. And, our whole game plan is to help people create wealth with real estate.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today, Vince. I really appreciate your expertise
you.
on this knowledge. I was very curious about what some of your answers would be. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll have you on again soon sometime.
Love to. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thanks again to Vince Gaetano for joining us on the podcast today. If you got some value from this interview, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button to see future videos. My name is Ron Quaroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional.
This has been the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. If you like this episode, find more information and episodes on our Facebook and YouTube pages. If you'd like to be a guest or have a conversation you'd like to learn more about, let us know by messaging the show on Facebook. Thanks for listening.